The refugee ships arrived at Io Station like wounded birds seeking shelter. Daeho watched from the observation deck as transport after transport docked with the station. Each ship carried survivors from the outer colonies, people who had lost everything when the Vorthak ships emerged from Europa's ice. 3 days had passed since the first attack. 3 days since Titan Research Station went silent. Now Enceladus Mining Complex was gone too, along with 12,000 workers and their families. The alien ships moved through space like hunters, destroying everything human they found. Mr. Kang, report to Command Center immediately. Daeho turned away from the window and walked through corridors packed with refugees. Children cried in their mothers' arms. Men and women sat against the walls with blank expressions, still in shock from losing their homes. The station was built to house 5,000 people. Now it held nearly 15,000. The command center buzzed with activity. Officers moved between computer stations, coordinating rescue operations and trying to establish contact with Earth. At the center of it all stood Colonel Park Ji-woo, the highest-ranking military officer in the Jupiter system. Colonel Park was a tall woman with gray streaks in her black hair. She had fought in the Mars border wars 10 years ago and earned respect throughout the colonial military. Now she faced an enemy unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. "Mr. Kang," she said, as Daeho entered, "I have read your file and the reports from Commander Kim. You claim to understand these aliens. I need to know everything you learned 20 years ago." Daeho looked around the room at the dozen officers listening. "Colonel, what I learned in Antarctica was incomplete. We only had 3 weeks to study the ships before the ice collapsed, but I can tell you what we discovered. Speak freely. The Vorthak ships are not just machines. They are alive. The hulls are made from a material that can heal itself when damaged. The power systems use biological components that can adapt to new situations. When we attacked them with conventional weapons, they learned to defend themselves." A young officer raised his hand. "Sir, are you saying our weapons cannot hurt them?" "Not exactly," Daeho replied. "But they can study our weapons and develop defenses very quickly. What works once might not work twice." Colonel Park nodded grimly. "That matches what we have observed. Our patrol ships hit the first Vorthak vessel with plasma torpedoes. The weapons caused visible damage, but when the same ships attacked the second vessel, the torpedoes had no effect." "The ships share information," Daeho explained. "When one learns something, they all learn it. That is why they are so dangerous." Dr. Lee Soo-jin stepped forward from the back of the room. Daeho recognized her from the station's science division. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with intelligent eyes and short black hair. "Mr. Kang," she said, "I have studied the alien artifacts recovered from various sites across the solar system. The technology you describe matches what I have seen. But I have found something else, something that might be important." She activated a wall display showing technical diagrams. "These are power flow patterns from artifacts found on Mars and the asteroid belt. Look at this section here." Daeho studied the display. The patterns were familiar from his work in Antarctica. That is their main power distribution system. All energy flows through central nodes before reaching individual ship systems. "Exactly," Dr. Lee said excitedly. "And look what happens when I adjust the frequency analysis." The display changed, showing wave patterns and energy signatures. Daeho felt his heart rate increase as he recognized what he was seeing. "There is a harmonic frequency," he said slowly. "A specific vibration that all their systems use to communicate with each other." "Yes," Dr. Lee confirmed. "And if we could disrupt that frequency, the ships would lose coordination," Daeho finished. "Maybe more than that. If the disruption was strong enough, it might cause their power systems to fail completely." Colonel Park moved closer to the display. "How would we create such a disruption?" Daeho thought carefully before answering. "It would require someone to get inside one of their ships and manually override their central power distribution system. The harmonic frequency has to be changed from within their own network. A boarding mission, Colonel Park said. How close would someone need to get? Close enough to touch the central power node with modified human equipment. And the person doing it would need to understand both human technology and Vorthak systems. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what Deho was describing. It would be a suicide mission into the heart of an alien warship, performed by someone with very specific knowledge. Colonel, a communications officer called out. Long-range sensors are detecting new movement from the main Vorthak force. They are leaving Europa orbit and heading toward Jupiter. Colonel Park walked to the sensor display. How many ships? 12 large vessels, ma'am. Each one the size of the ships that destroyed the outer colonies. They will reach Jupiter space in 72 hours. Deho felt cold fear in his stomach. Colonel, Jupiter has 4 billion people. The industrial complexes, the orbital cities, the research stations. If the Vorthak reached Jupiter, humanity loses everything, Colonel Park finished. Dr. Lee, how long would it take to prepare the harmonic disruption equipment Mr. Kang described? Given our current resources and the data we have, maybe 48 hours. But we would need to test it, and we would need someone who understands Vorthak technology to operate it. All eyes turned to Deho. He had known this moment would come from the first day he saw the seismic readings from Europa. 20 years ago, he had been the mechanical specialist who studied alien technology. Now he was the only person alive with that knowledge. I will do it, he said quietly. But I cannot do it alone. I will need a team, and I will need a way to get inside one of their ships. Colonel Park began issuing orders immediately. I want our best soldiers assigned to this mission. Captain Choi Min-ho, you will lead the assault team. Sergeant Nam Ji-hai, you will handle explosives and breaching equipment. A young man in pilot uniform stepped forward. Colonel, I volunteer to fly the mission. My name is Kim Tae-woo. I know these ships better than anyone. You are a civilian pilot, Colonel Park said. Yes, ma'am, but I flew cargo runs to all the stations the aliens destroyed. I know their patrol patterns, their sensor ranges, and I know how to make a ship look like debris. Colonel Park studied the young pilot's face. Very well. Dr. Lee, you will also join the mission. Your knowledge of Vorthak artifacts might be crucial inside their ship. As the officers began planning the details of the mission, Deho walked back to the observation window. The Vorthak ships were visible now as dark spots moving against Jupiter's bright surface. In less than 3 days, they would arrive and begin the final phase of their attack. He thought about the people on Jupiter, the billions of humans who had no idea what was coming for them. He thought about his team from Antarctica, most of them dead for 20 years. He thought about the alien ships sleeping under the ice until something woke them up. Soon he would return to one of those ships, not as a scientist this time, but as humanity's last hope. The mechanic who had spent his life fixing broken things would have to break something instead. Behind him, Colonel Park and her officers worked frantically to prepare for a mission that might save humanity or might simply delay the inevitable. Time was running out and the ancient enemy was coming home. The warning lights in the control room flashed red against the metal walls. Kang Dae-ho wiped grease from his hands and looked at the seismic readings one more time. The numbers made no sense. Something massive was moving deep beneath Europa's ice, something that should not exist. Dae-ho had worked at Ganymede mining station for 12 years. He knew every sound the machines made, every vibration that traveled through space between the moons. This was different. This was wrong. He walked to the communication panel and pressed the emergency channel. Control. This is Maintenance Bay. 7. I need to speak with Station Commander Kim immediately. The voice that answered sounded bored. Dae-ho, Commander Kim is in a meeting with Earth representatives. Whatever broken pipe you found can wait until tomorrow. This is not about pipes, Dae-ho said. His voice stayed calm, but his hands shook slightly. The seismic readings from Europa show movement patterns. Large movement patterns. Someone needs to see this now. A long pause followed. Send the data to my terminal. I will review it and forward to the commander if necessary. Daeho pressed the data transfer button and waited. 20 minutes later, his communication panel buzzed. Daeho, report to Commander Kim's office immediately. The hallways of Ganymede Station stretched long and narrow between the sections. Daeho walked quickly, his work boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. Other workers nodded at him as he passed. Everyone knew Daeho. He fixed everything that broke, and on a mining station far from Earth, everything broke often. Commander Kim Sung-woo sat behind his desk with 3 other people. Daeho recognized Dr. Park from the Science Division, but the other 2 wore Earth Authority uniforms he had never seen before. Sit down, Mr. Kang, Commander Kim said. These officers want to ask you about the seismic data you sent. One of the Earth Authority officers, a woman with short black hair, leaned forward. Mr. Kang, you have flagged these readings as urgent. Our preliminary analysis suggests natural ice movement. Europa's surface shifts constantly. Why do you believe this is different? Daeho looked at the 3 faces staring at him. How could he explain what he knew without sounding crazy? How could he tell them about the expedition to Antarctica 20 years ago, about the things they found buried in Earth's ice? The frequency patterns, he said slowly. The vibrations follow a specific rhythm. Natural ice movement is random. This is organized. This is artificial. The second Earth Authority officer, an older man with gray hair, made notes on a tablet. Mr. Kang, your file shows extensive mechanical training but no geological background. What makes you qualified to interpret seismic data? 20 years ago, I was part of the Antarctic Deep Core Project, Daeho said. We found structures buried 3 kilometers under the ice, structures that were not made by humans. The room became very quiet. Dr. Park stopped writing. Commander Kim's eyes widened slightly. The Antarctic findings are classified, the woman officer said sharply. How do you have access to that information? Because I was there, Daeho replied. I was the mechanical specialist who helped excavate the artifacts. I studied their construction, their materials, their energy signatures. The patterns I am seeing from Europa match exactly what we found in Antarctica. The older officer looked at his tablet and scrolled through data. Records show that the Antarctic Deep Core project ended abruptly 20 years ago. All team members were sworn to secrecy. What happened down there, Mr. Kang? Daeho closed his eyes for a moment. He could still remember the cold of the Antarctic. Wind, the excitement of discovery that turned to horror. The emergency evacuation that left half his team buried under collapsing ice. We found ships, he said quietly. Huge ships made of materials we could not identify. They had been frozen for centuries, maybe longer. But when our drilling equipment hit their hulls, they started to respond. Lights began to flash. Systems that had been dead for hundreds of years began to wake up. What kind of ships? Dr. Park asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alien ships, a whole fleet of them, preserved perfectly in the ice. We managed to study them for 3 weeks before everything went wrong. The ships began generating massive amounts of energy. The ice around them started to melt. Our equipment readings showed they were trying to restart their main power systems. The woman officer leaned back in her chair. And then what happened? The ice shelf collapsed. Most of my team died in the avalanche. The few of us who survived were evacuated immediately. Earth Authority sealed the site and classified everything. We had learned. They told us never to speak about what we found. Commander Kim stood up and walked to the window that looked out toward Jupiter. Mr. Kang, if what you are saying is true, then the readings from Europa mean that more ships are waking up. Daeho finished. Ships that have been sleeping under Europa's ice for the same amount of time. And if they are waking up, it means Something has activated them. The older Earth Authority officer was typing rapidly on his tablet. I am contacting Antarctic Command for verification of your story. If your claims are accurate, we need to treat this situation as a potential threat. Level. Alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red warning lights flashed in the corridors outside the office. Commander Kim pressed the emergency communication button on his desk. Control, report status. Commander, we have multiple energy signatures appearing on long-range sensors. 3 large objects have just breached Europa's surface. They are... Commander! They are moving! Through the office window, Daeho could see Europa in the distance, a small white dot against the blackness of space. But now, there were other dots near it, dark shapes that had not been there an hour ago. How large are these objects? Commander Kim asked. Each one is approximately 3 kilometers long, sir. They appear to be artificial constructs. They are generating massive energy fields and... Commander, they just destroyed Titan Research Station. The communication channel filled with static and then went silent. Daeho felt his heart pounding in his chest. After 20 years of silence, after 20 years of hoping the buried ships would never wake up, his worst fears were coming true. We need to evacuate the station, he said to the room. Those ships are not exploring or communicating. They are hunting. The woman officer stood up quickly. How do you know what they are doing? Because 20 years ago, we managed to translate some of their computer systems before everything collapsed, Daeho said. They are called the Vorthak, and they are not visitors. They are conquerors. As if to prove his words, the communication system crackled to life with distress signals from stations throughout the Jupiter system. One by one, the voices went silent as the ancient alien Armada began its work of destruction. Daeho looked out at the approaching darkness and realized he was the only person alive who understood what humanity was facing. The last surviving member of the Antarctic expedition, the only human who had studied Vorthak technology and lived to tell about it. The war was beginning, and he was the only one who might know how to stop it. 48 hours. That was all the time they had left before the Vorthak fleet reached Jupiter. Daeho worked without sleep in the converted cargo bay that now served as their mission preparation area. His hands moved quickly over the harmonic disruption device, checking every connection and circuit. The device looked simple from the outside. A metal box the size of a briefcase filled with human technology, modified to interface with alien systems. But Daeho knew the complexity hidden inside. One wrong connection, and the device would be useless. One calculation error, and the mission would fail. How are we looking, Mr. Kang? Captain Choi Min-ho asked as he entered the work area. The captain was a serious man in his 30s with scars on his face from the Mars border wars. He carried himself like a soldier who had seen too much fighting. The device is ready, Daeho replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. But I cannot test it without access to actual Vorthak technology. We will not know if it works until we are inside their ship. Sergeant Nam Ji-hai looked up from her explosives preparation. She was younger than the captain, maybe 25, but her eyes held the same hardness that came from military service. What happens if the device fails? Then we try to damage their ship as much as possible before they kill us, Captain Choi said simply. At least we might learn something useful for the next team. Dr. Lee entered the work area carrying data, tablets and sensor readings. I have been studying the Vorthak fleet movements. They are not just approaching Jupiter randomly, they are following specific patterns. She activated a portable display showing the alien ship's paths through space. Look at their formation. They are positioning themselves around Jupiter's major moons and industrial complexes. This is not exploration. This is preparation for systematic destruction. Daeho studied the tactical display. They learned from their previous invasion 800 years ago. They know where humans build their most important facilities. Previous invasion? Sergeant Nam asked. I thought this was first contact. No. Dr. Lee explained. We found evidence in the Antarctic artifacts that the Vorthak attacked Earth before. They were defeated somehow and their ships were buried under the ice. But now they are awake and they remember everything. Kim Tae-woo entered the work area carrying a tablet showing ship schematics. The young pilot had been working for 2 days straight to modify a mining vessel for their infiltration mission. The ship is ready. I have removed all identifying markers and added debris camouflage. From a distance, we will look like wreckage from one of the destroyed stations. Colonel Park followed him into the room. She looked tired but determined. Team, I have updates from our surveillance operations. The Vorthak flagship has been identified. It is the largest ship in their fleet, approximately 5 kilometers long. Intelligence suggests it controls the other vessels. She activated another display showing detailed scans of the alien ship. This vessel, which we are calling the Harbinger, appears to be much older than the others. Our analysis indicates it may have been the command ship during their previous invasion. Dae-ho felt recognition stir in his memory. Colonel, can you enhance the image of the ship's hull structure? The display zoomed in on the alien vessel's surface. Dae-ho saw patterns and markings that looked familiar from his work in Antarctica. I have seen this ship before. Not this exact vessel, but ships built with the same design principles. The Harbinger is not just their flagship, it is their home. What do you mean? Dr. Lee asked. The Vorthak are not from this solar system originally. They travel from star to star in these ships, conquering worlds and taking resources. The Harbinger has been their mobile command center for centuries, maybe longer. Captain Choi checked his weapons one more time. Does that change our mission plan? It makes it more dangerous, Dae-ho replied. The Harbinger will have more defenses, more crew, and more advanced technology than the other ships. But it also means that if we can disable it, we might stop the entire fleet. Colonel Park nodded grimly. Then the Harbinger is your target. Kim, how close can you get the infiltration ship to the flagship? Close enough, the pilot replied. The Vorthak ships do not seem to pay attention to debris. They are focused on the larger human settlements and military vessels. A small ship disguised as wreckage should be able to approach without detection. Sergeant Nam finished packing her explosive charges. Once we are inside, how long do we have before they realize we are there? Unknown, Dae-ho said. The ships have internal sensors, but we do not know how sensitive they are to human presence. We might have minutes, or we might be detected immediately. Dr. Lee pulled up architectural diagrams based on their analysis of the Harbinger. The central power distribution system should be located here in the ship's core. But to reach it, you will have to travel through almost 2 kilometers of alien corridors. Corridors that might be filled with defensive systems, Captain Choi added, or alien crew members. The team spent the next several hours reviewing their mission plan. Kim would pilot their disguised ship close to the Harbinger and find a way to attach to the alien vessel's hull. The team would then cut through the outer shell and enter the ship's interior. Once inside, they would fight their way to the central power core while Dae-ho carried the harmonic disruption device. Dr. Lee would provide guidance about alien technology and help Dae-ho interface with the Vorthak systems. Captain Choi and Sergeant Nam would handle security and clear the path forward. As they worked, alerts continued to arrive from observation stations throughout the Jupiter system. The Vorthak fleet was accelerating, moving faster than previous calculations had predicted. They would arrive in 36 hours instead of 48. We launch in 6 hours, Colonel Park announced. Whether we are ready or not. Dae-ho looked around at his team. Captain Choi cleaned his rifle with practiced efficiency. Sergeant Nam organized her explosives with careful precision. Dr. Lee reviewed alien technology data on her tablet. Kim studied navigation charts and approach vectors. These people were volunteering to die with him. They were flying into the heart of an alien warship with almost no chance of survival, all because humanity needed someone to try. Colonel, Dae-ho said, what happens if we fail? Then Jupiter falls, and 4 billion people die, she replied. Earth will have time to prepare defenses, but without the industrial capacity of the Jupiter colonies, humanity's chances of survival drop significantly. And if we succeed, then we buy time for Earth to develop better weapons and defenses. We give humanity a fighting chance. As the team made final preparations, long-range sensors detected the first elements of the Vorthak fleet entering Jupiter's outer gravitational field. The aliens were moving in formation, their ships dark against the star field except for the strange lights that pulsed along their hulls. Daiho packed the harmonic disruption device into a protective case and secured it to his equipment harness. 20 years ago, he had studied alien technology as a scientist, hoping to learn something new about the universe. Now he carried that knowledge into battle, hoping to save his species. The infiltration ship waited in the docking bay, disguised, as debris and loaded with everything they would need for their desperate mission. In a few hours, they would launch toward the Harbinger and either save humanity or die trying. Outside the station windows, Jupiter hung in space like a giant orange marble, unaware that its 4 billion inhabitants depended on 5 humans and a plan that had almost no chance of success. The desperate gambit was about to begin. The inside of the Harbinger was unlike anything Daiho had imagined. The corridors were not built from metal and plastic like human ships. Instead, they seemed grown from some dark organic material that pulsed with a faint blue light. The walls felt warm to the touch and seemed to breathe. "This is not a ship," Dr. Lee whispered as they moved through the alien passage. "This is a living creature." The team had successfully attached their disguised vessel to the Harbinger's hull and cut through the outer shell. Kim remained with the ship to monitor their escape route, while the other 4 pushed deeper into the alien vessel. Captain Choi led the way with his rifle ready. Behind him, Sergeant Nam carried her explosives and scanning equipment. Dr. Lee followed, with her analysis tools, while Daiho brought up the rear carrying the harmonic disruption device. "Movement ahead," Captain Choi said quietly into his communication unit. "Something is coming this way." The team pressed against the corridor walls as 3 creatures approached. They looked like a cross between insects and machines, with multiple legs and eyes that glowed with the same blue light as the ship's walls. The creatures moved past the humans without seeming to notice them. "Maintenance organisms," Dr. Lee observed. "The ship uses them to repair damage and monitor systems." They continued forward, following the path Dr. Lee had calculated toward the ship's central core. But as they moved deeper into the Harbinger, the passages became more complex. Corridors branched in multiple directions, and some areas were completely blocked by organic growths. "We are lost," Sergeant Nam said after 20 minutes of searching for the right path. "These passages do not match our scanned layout." "The ship is changing," Dr. Lee realized. "It knows we are here, and it is rerouting its internal structure to confuse us." Suddenly, alarms began echoing through the corridors. The blue lights changed to red, and the walls began pulsing faster. "So much for stealth," Captain Choi said. "How far to the central core?" Daiho checked his portable scanner. "At least 1 kilometer, but now we have to assume the ship will send defenders after us." As if summoned by his words, new creatures began emerging from openings in the walls. These were larger than the maintenance organisms, with sharp claws and teeth that gleamed like metal. They moved quickly toward the human intruders. Captain Choi opened fire with his rifle. The energy bolt struck the first creature and sent it crashing into the wall. But more kept coming, pouring out of passages throughout the area. "Move," he shouted. "I will hold them off." The team ran forward while Captain Choi provided covering fire. His shots echoed through the corridors as he fought the alien defenders. But there were too many of them, and they kept coming. "Captain," Sergeant Nam called over the communication unit, "report your status." "Surrounded," came his reply. "Get to the core. Complete the mission." His voice cut off as the sounds of fighting intensified behind them. Daeho felt sick knowing they were leaving Captain Choi to die, but the mission was more important than any individual life. They reached a large chamber where the corridors opened into a vast space. The room was filled with strange organic pods, arranged in rows along the walls. Each pod contained something floating in a thick liquid. Dr. Lee approached one of the pods and gasped. "These are people, human people from the colonies." Daeho looked closer and saw she was right. The pods contained humans in various stages of some kind of process. Some looked recently captured, while others had been changed in ways that made them barely recognizable. "The Vorthak are not just destroying our colonies," Dr. Lee said with horror in her voice. "They are harvesting our people." More pods contained other species, aliens that Daeho did not recognize. "This ship has been collecting intelligent life forms for centuries," he realized. "They are studying us, learning from us." Sergeant Nam found a passage leading out of the chamber. "This way. My scanner shows energy readings that match the central core location." They left the horrible chamber behind and continued toward their target, but the defenses were getting stronger. Organic barriers blocked their path, forcing them to use explosives to break through. More defender creatures attacked, and Sergeant Nam had to use most of her remaining charges to clear the way. Finally, they reached the ship's central core. The chamber was enormous, stretching up and down beyond the reach of their lights. In the center was a massive organic structure that pulsed with energy. Cables and tubes connected it to systems throughout the ship. "The central nervous system," Dr. Lee breathed. "This is the brain of the Harbinger." Daeho set up the harmonic disruption device next to the main power coupling. But as he began connecting the interface cables, something unexpected happened. The organic structure began to glow brighter, and a voice spoke in heavily accented English. "Why do you seek to destroy us, small creatures?" The team froze. The voice was coming from the central core itself, from the ship's brain. "You can speak," Dr. Lee said in amazement. "We have learned your language from the minds we have collected over the centuries. We know what you are attempting to do. You wish to disable our fleet." Daeho continued working on the device connections while Dr. Lee spoke with the alien intelligence. "You are killing innocent people. You are destroying our homes." "We are surviving," the voice replied. "For millions of years we have fled from something far worse than ourselves. We take what we need to continue our journey." "What are you running from?" Dr. Lee asked. The chamber filled with images projected from the organic walls. They showed galaxies consumed by darkness, entire star systems going silent, and fleets of ships fleeing through space. "The consuming dark," the voice said. "It devours everything in its path. Entire civilizations, whole galaxies. We have been running from it for longer than your species has existed." Sergeant Nam raised her weapon toward the central core. "That does not give you the right to destroy us." "Does it not?" the voice asked. "Your species fights among yourselves over resources. You destroy your own worlds with pollution and war. We at least preserve some of what we take." Daeho finished the connections and activated the harmonic disruption device. "Maybe we fight and make mistakes," he said. "But we also hope and dream and try to become better. That is worth preserving." The device began generating the harmonic frequency that would disable the Vorthak fleet. But as the energy built up, the ship's brain spoke one last time. "The consuming dark has found us again. It will be here soon. When it arrives, you will understand why we do what we do." The harmonic wave pulsed through the ship's systems. All around them, the lights began failing and the organic walls stopped moving. The great alien vessel was dying, and with it, the ancient intelligence that had guided the Vorthak for countless years. "We need to get out of here," Sergeant Nam said, as the ship began shaking around them. But as they ran toward their escape route, Daeho wondered about the alien's final words. What was the consuming dark, and how long did humanity have before it arrived? The Harbinger was dying around them. Emergency lights flickered as the harmonic disruptions spread through the ship's systems. The organic walls that had pulsed with life now hung limp and dark. Daiho could hear the great vessel's death in the sounds echoing through the corridors. The device worked, Dr. Lee said as they ran toward their escape point. But something is wrong. The disruption is not spreading to the other ships as planned. Daiho checked his scanner while they moved. The readings showed that the Harbinger's systems were failing, but the other Vorthak vessels in the fleet remained active. The ships are more independent than we thought. Destroying the flagship does not automatically destroy the others. Sergeant Nam led them through passages that were now completely dark. Only their portable lights showed the way forward. "How many more ships are out there?" 11, Dr. Lee replied, each one capable of destroying entire colonies. They reached the hull breach, where Kim waited with their escape vessel. The young pilot looked relieved to see them. "I was beginning to think you were not coming back. What happened to Captain Choi?" "He did not make it," Daiho said quietly. "He stayed behind so we could reach the core." Kim helped them aboard the small ship and immediately began undocking procedures. Through the viewports, they could see the Harbinger drifting powerless in space, but the other Vorthak ships continued moving toward Jupiter. "We have to contact Colonel Park," Sergeant Nam said. "She needs to know that the mission only partially succeeded." As their ship moved away from the dying flagship, Kim established communication with Io Station. Colonel Park's voice came through the speakers with barely controlled tension. "Team leader, report status." "The Harbinger is disabled," Daiho replied. "But the other ships are still operational. The harmonic disruption did not spread through the fleet as we hoped." A long silence followed. "Understood. Return to base immediately. We have other problems developing." During the flight back to Io Station, Dr. Lee studied the data they had collected from inside the Harbinger. Daiho, the alien intelligence, mentioned something called the consuming dark. "Did you record that conversation?" "Yes," he replied. "But I do not understand what it meant." "I think I do," Dr. Lee said grimly. "Look at these energy readings from deep space. Our long-range sensors have been detecting strange signals for the past few hours." She showed him the sensor data on her tablet. The readings showed massive objects moving through space beyond the edge of the solar system, objects that were much larger than the Vorthak ships. "How many?" Daiho asked. "At least 50 vessels, each one the size of a small moon, and they are moving toward us." When they docked at Io Station, Colonel Park met them personally. Her expression was even more serious than usual. "Good work on disabling the Harbinger. But we have confirmed Dr. Lee's analysis. A new fleet is approaching from deep space." She led them to the command center, where the main display showed tactical readings from throughout the solar system. "The remaining Vorthak ships have stopped their attack on Jupiter. Instead, they are taking defensive positions around the outer planets." "Defensive positions?" Sergeant Nam asked. "Against what?" "Against the consuming dark," Colonel Park replied. "We intercepted communications between the Vorthak ships after the Harbinger went silent. They are preparing to fight something they consider far more dangerous than humanity." Daiho studied the tactical display. "Colonel, are you saying the Vorthak want to work with us?" "Not exactly, but they are no longer attacking our settlements. All their attention is focused on the approaching fleet." Dr. Lee pulled up her analysis of the alien ships. "The beings inside the Harbinger told us they have been running from the consuming dark for millions of years. If that fleet out there represents the same enemy, then the Vorthak are more afraid of it than they are of us." Over the next 12 hours, more information came in from observation stations throughout the solar system. The approaching fleet was enormous, consisting of ships built from materials that human sensors could barely detect. Worse, the fleet was already having effects on space around it. "Look at this," Dr. Lee said, showing readings from the outer sensor networks. "As the consuming dark fleet approaches, stars in that region are going dark. Not exploding or burning out, just going dark. What does that mean? Kim asked. I think it means they are consuming the energy from the stars themselves, Dr. Lee replied. Taking the light and heat and using it for some purpose we do not understand. Colonel Park called an emergency meeting with all senior staff and the surviving members of the infiltration team. We face an impossible choice, she began. We can continue fighting the Vorthak and face the consuming dark alone, or we can try to work with our former enemies. Work with them how? Daeho asked. The Vorthak have technology we do not possess. Their biomechanical ships can adapt and evolve in ways our vessels cannot. Combined with human ingenuity and determination, we might have a chance against the consuming dark. Dr. Lee nodded slowly. The intelligence in the Harbinger said they preserve some of what they take. Maybe that includes knowledge and technology that could help us. But can we trust them? Sergeant Nam asked. They destroyed our colonies and killed thousands of people. No, Colonel Park admitted. We cannot trust them. But we might be able to use them and they might be able to use us. As they debated their options, new reports arrived from the Jupiter colonies. The Vorthak ships were no longer attacking human settlements. Instead, they were broadcasting technical data about the approaching enemy fleet. They are sharing intelligence, Dr. Lee realized. They want us to understand what we are all facing. Daeho looked at the data streaming in from the alien ships. The information was complex, but it painted a terrifying picture of the consuming dark. They were not just conquerors like the Vorthak. They were something far worse, something that turned entire civilizations into extensions of their own collective consciousness. Colonel, he said finally, I think we have to try working with the Vorthak. Not because we trust them, but because humanity needs every advantage we can get. Agreed, Colonel Park replied. Dr. Lee, I want you to establish communication with the nearest Vorthak vessel. Tell them we are willing to share information and coordinate defenses. As Dr. Lee began working on the communication protocols, Daeho stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the consuming dark was approaching with technology and power, beyond human understanding. The ancient enemy that had driven the Vorthak across the galaxy for millions of years was now coming for Earth. The mechanic who had started this crisis by recognizing alien energy signatures now faced a new challenge. He would have to help humanity form an alliance with the very species that had tried to destroy them, all in the hope of surviving something even worse. The price of victory against the Vorthak might be having to stand beside them against the true enemy. But as Daeho watched the stars beginning to go dark in the distance, he knew they had no other choice. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Jupiter, and the solar system had become a place no human could have imagined. The Vorthak fleet hung in space like sleeping giants, their biomechanical ships now working alongside human vessels to prepare defenses against the consuming dark. Daeho stood in the converted conference room aboard Io Station, watching as human engineers worked side by side with Vorthak technicians. The aliens looked nothing like he had expected. Without their ship's protective systems, they were surprisingly fragile creatures, pale and thin with large eyes adapted for low-light conditions. The integration is proceeding faster than we hoped, Dr. Lee reported to the assembled command staff. The Vorthak technology complements our own systems in unexpected ways. She activated a display showing the combined fleet now defending the outer solar system. Human warships had been fitted with Vorthak bio-armor that could heal damage and adapt to enemy weapons. Alien vessels carried human weapon systems that provided firepower their organic ships had never possessed. Most importantly, Dr. Lee continued, we have established real communication with the Vorthak survivors. They are not the monsters we thought they were. Colonel Park, now promoted to Admiral, nodded toward the Vorthak representative attending the meeting. The alien's name was Keth, and he spoke English with a soft musical accent learned from studying human broadcasts. Admiral Park, Keth said, my people wish to express regret for the damage caused to your colonies. We were driven by desperation and fear, not malice. Your regret does not bring back the dead, Admiral Park replied, but we understand that you were also refugees running from something worse. Dae-ho had spent the past 3 weeks working directly with Vorthak engineers to understand their technology. The experience had changed his perspective completely. Admiral, the Vorthak have been fighting the consuming dark for over 2 million years. They have seen entire galaxies consumed by this enemy. Keth activated his own display, showing images that made everyone in the room feel cold. The consuming dark is not a species or a government. It is a collective consciousness that spreads from star to star, converting all life into extensions of itself. Once it absorbs a civilization, that species becomes part of the dark and helps it consume others. How do we fight something like that? Kim asked. The young pilot had become the first human certified to fly a hybrid Vorthak-human vessel, symbolizing the new cooperation between species. By refusing to be absorbed, Keth replied, by maintaining our individual consciousness and working together to resist their conversion process. Dr. Lee brought up new sensor readings from the edge of the solar system. The consuming dark fleet will arrive in 4 days, 57 vessels, each one capable of processing an entire planet. What does processing mean? Admiral Park asked. They land conversion devices on populated worlds, Keth explained. These devices emit a signal that slowly changes the brain patterns of intelligent life forms. Within days, the entire population begins thinking as part of the Dark Collective. They stop being individuals and become extensions of the enemy consciousness. Dae-ho felt sick thinking about billions of humans losing their individual minds. Is there a way to block these conversion signals? Yes, Keth said, but it requires a combined effort. Human technology can generate interference patterns, while Vorthak biosystems can create living shields that adapt to changing signal frequencies. Over the following days, the combined human Vorthak fleet worked frantically to prepare defenses. The outer planets were evacuated, with their populations moved to protected facilities on Mars and Earth. Jupiter's industrial complexes were converted to produce hybrid weapons and defensive systems. Dae-ho found himself at the center of the preparation efforts. His unique understanding of both human and Vorthak technology made him invaluable in creating the integrated systems needed to fight the consuming dark. Dae-ho, Admiral Park called him to her office on the 3rd day. I have a special assignment for you. She showed him plans for a new type of vessel, combining the best elements of both species' technology. This ship will serve as our command center during the battle. It needs someone who understands both human engineering and Vorthak biosystems. You want me to command a warship? Dae-ho asked in surprise. Admiral, I am a mechanic. You are. The person who recognized the first alien signals. You are the one who found their weakness and disabled their flagship. You are the bridge between our species and theirs. She paused and looked directly at him. You are exactly what humanity needs right now. On the 4th day, the consuming dark arrived. The enemy fleet emerged from deep space like a spreading shadow. Their ships were unlike anything human or Vorthak had ever built, appearing to be made from crystallized darkness itself. As they approached, the space around them seemed to bend and twist. All defensive positions, Admiral Park ordered from the command center of the new hybrid vessel. Remember, we are not just fighting for Earth or the Vorthak homeworld. We are fighting for the right to remain ourselves. The battle began as the dark ships launched their conversion devices toward the inner planets. The combined human Vorthak fleet intercepted most of them, but several got through and began broadcasting their mind-altering signals. Interference generators activated, Dae-ho reported from his position coordinating the defensive systems. Human populations on Mars and Earth are protected. But the consuming dark had other weapons. Their ships fired energy beams that could dissolve matter at the molecular level. Worse, they began broadcasting signals directly at the defending fleet, trying to convert the crews of the ships themselves. Bioshields holding, reported the Vorthak engineer working beside Dae-ho. But the dark is adapting faster than we expected. The battle raged for hours as the combined fleet fought desperately to prevent the enemy from reaching the inner planets. Human ships used their mobility and firepower to harass the larger dark vessels, while Vorthak bioships provided adaptive defenses and healing support. But gradually, the defenders began to lose ground. The consuming dark was simply too powerful, too adaptable, too experienced at converting entire civilizations. "Admiral," Deho called out, "I have an idea, but it will require both species to work together more closely than ever before." "Explain." "Quickly," Admiral Park replied as explosions lit up the space around them. "The dark converts civilizations by overwhelming their individual consciousness with collective thought patterns. But what if we reverse the process? What if we use our combined consciousness to overwhelm one of their ships?" Dr. Lee, working at a nearby station, understood immediately. A feedback loop. We broadcast our own collective signal back at them. But instead of conformity, we broadcast diversity. Human creativity combined with Vorthak adaptation. Keth joined the discussion from his position coordinating alien ships. "It is dangerous. If we fail, the entire fleet could be converted at once." "If we do nothing, we lose anyway," Deho replied. "At least this gives us a chance." Admiral Park made the decision. "Do it." Working together, human and Vorthak engineers created a massive feedback transmitter using the combined power of the entire fleet. Instead of broadcasting a single unified message like the consuming dark, they transmitted the chaotic, creative, adaptive thoughts of two species working together. The signal hit the nearest dark ship and something unexpected happened. The vessel stopped moving and began to change, its crystalline darkness shifting to show patterns of light and color. "It is working," Dr. Lee reported. "The ship is breaking free from the Dark Collective." One by one, other dark vessels began to change as the feedback signal spread through their fleet. Ships that had been part of the consuming consciousness for millennia suddenly remembered what it was like to think as individuals. The battle turned as former dark ships joined the defenders, their crews finally free after eons of collective slavery. The remaining dark vessels, faced with losing more of their fleet, retreated back toward deep space. In the aftermath of the battle, Deho stood once again at an observation window, looking out at a solar system transformed. Human and Vorthak. Ships worked together to repair damage and establish new colonies. Former dark vessels, their crews learning to be individuals again, added their knowledge to the growing alliance. "You did it," Dr. Lee said, joining him at the window. "You found a way to fix something that had been broken for millions of years." Deho smiled slightly. "I just did what I always do. I saw something that was not working properly and figured out how to repair it." Kim approached them, still wearing his hybrid ship pilot uniform. "The first joint colony ships are ready to launch. Humans, Vorthak, and former dark species working together to explore new worlds." Outside the window, the combined fleet prepared for humanity's next great adventure. The ancient alien Armada that had once threatened extinction had become humanity's partners in reaching for the stars. Deho, the last surviving mechanic from the Antarctic expedition, had not only saved his species, but helped create something entirely new. An alliance of minds that refused to be consumed, a collection of individuals who found strength in their differences rather than their similarities. The mechanic who had spent his life fixing broken things had finally fixed.